The dreams had returned, sharper now. No longer fleeting visions, but full memories of what had not yet happened. He saw corridors drenched in blood, heard the desperate cries of men who called his name as the enemy broke through the walls. He saw his brothers, torn between loyalty and madness, their once brilliant legions now ash-gray and hollow. He saw the vengeful spirit descending upon Terra, blotting out the sun. And each time, when the vision ended, he found himself standing in the same place, beneath the great mural in the Hall of Triumph, where the Emperor was depicted holding aloft the light of mankind. Sanguinius would stare at it for hours, knowing what lay ahead, but unable to turn away. He was not alone this time. "Your silence grows heavier each day, brother," said a voice behind him. It was Robout Guilliman, Lord of Ultramar. His presence filled the vast hall with calm authority, yet beneath it all lingered exhaustion. Even a demigod could feel the strain of the galaxy tearing itself apart. Sanguinius did not look back. "Have you ever looked into the future, Robout?" The Ultramarine paused, only through logic, never through sight. "Then you are fortunate." Sanguinius turned, eyes distant but burning with inner light. "The future has shown me what must come. I have seen Terra burn. I have seen Horus standing before me, and I have seen the light fade from my own eyes." Guilliman's expression hardened, but not from disbelief. "Visions can lie. The warp twists truth into torment. You know this as well as I." Sanguinius shook his head. "Not all truths come from lies. Some come as mercy disguised as despair." The two Primarchs faced each other, their golden armor reflecting the mural's light. Between them lay the weight of the Imperium itself, the hope of mankind and its doom. "You mean to die," Guilliman said quietly. "I mean to stand," Sanguinius replied. "If death is the price for that, then so be it." Guilliman's jaw tightened. "You would walk knowingly into prophecy." "I would walk knowingly into purpose." A silence fell between them. The air itself seemed to still, as if the palace understood the gravity of their words. Then Guilliman stepped forward, lowering his voice. "If your vision speaks true, then you cannot face it alone. The IX Legion will follow you to the end, but you must allow us to prepare, to build defenses that—" Sanguinius raised a hand. "You cannot build walls high enough to stop fate, brother, but we will do what we must. When the storm comes, the Blood Angels will be the first to meet it." "And you?" Guilliman asked. "I will be where I am needed most," said the angel, wings folding behind him like a shroud. "Before the throne, beside our Father." He turned then, walking away, his reflection fading beneath the painted light of the Emperor. The weeks that followed were a blur of motion. Orders were given, fleets recalled, and worlds abandoned in haste. The full weight of the rebellion pressed against the Imperium's throat. Istvan was lost, Calth burned, and the traitor legions grew bolder. But amidst the chaos, Sanguinius found clarity. His visions were no longer isolated. They began to bleed into waking moments. He would glance at a stone column and see it cracked and burning. He would hear a custodian's footstep echo in the hall and recognize it from a moment that had not yet happened. At times it felt as though he were walking through two realities, one alive, one dying. And every time the line between them blurred, he felt the pull of the warp. One night, unable to bear it, he retreated to the shrine of his Gene father, a private place deep within the palace, guarded only by silence. He knelt there, beneath a golden statue of the Emperor, the air thick with the scent of oil and incense. The chamber was dark, lit only by the faint radiance of his own wings. He closed his eyes and whispered into the void. "Father, I see the end. I see my brothers broken, and I see my blood upon the stone. I see a future where light and shadow meet, and I cannot tell which will prevail. Tell me, what am I to do?" For a heartbeat, just one, he felt an answering warmth, vast and overwhelming. Not words, but presence. It filled him like sunlight breaking through storm clouds, reminding him that he was not alone. But then it was gone. and in its place came the whisper of another voice, faint and distant, his own name spoken in grief. Sanguinius. He froze. It was Horus' voice. He turned sharply, expecting some phantom of the warp, but the chamber remained still. Yet the echo lingered, wrapping around his thoughts like smoke. Sanguinius rose slowly, his hand brushing the hilt of his sword. "Horus," he murmured, "even now you reach for me." The whisper came again, softer this time. "I did not want this, brother." A vision seized him. He stood once more aboard a ship, vast and shadowed. The air was thick with ash and the copper scent of blood. The walls trembled with the impact of distant weapons, and before him stood Horus, the War Master, his once noble armor now blackened, veins of warplight pulsing through it. Between them lay a single bridge of stone and fire. Sanguinius called out, his voice shaking the air. "End this. Whatever bargain you have made, break it. You can still return." But Horus did not answer. His eyes, once filled with resolve, were now hollow, replaced by something immeasurable and ancient. "You cannot stop it," the War Master said at last. "Even I am bound by it." "Then we will defy it together," Sanguinius shouted. Horus' expression faltered for a moment, pain flickering through the corruption. "You always believed you could change fate. That is why you were chosen to die first." The bridge cracked. Fire erupted beneath their feet, and as Sanguinius lunged forward, the vision shattered again, his body thrown backward into reality. He awoke in the shrine, his wings trembling, blood trickling from his nose. The marble beneath him was scorched where he had fallen. But this time he understood. The visions were no longer warnings, they were rehearsals. The warp was not showing him a possible future. It was forcing him to remember one that had already been written. His death was no longer just inevitable, it was necessary. When dawn came, he summoned his commanders. The great stratagem was alive with activity, but the moment he entered, silence fell. Askelon, his chief captain, bowed deeply. "My lord, you called for us." Sanguinius' eyes swept across the room, each warrior, each soul under his command. The sons of Baal, his sons. They looked upon him as if he were invincible, as if the galaxy itself could not take him from them. And yet he knew that soon they would watch him fall. "My brothers," he began, his voice calm but resonant. "The darkness we have fought for so long gathers now in full. Horus moves against the throne. Terra will become the heart of the storm." A murmur rippled through the gathered blood angels. Askelon stepped forward. "Then we will meet him there, my lord. We will hold the line beside the Emperor himself." Sanguinius nodded slowly. "You will, and you will not break." He looked down at his hands, at the faint tremor he had begun to notice. The psychic weight of his visions pressed heavier with each day. His gene curse stirred, the red thirst whispering from within, tempting him to abandon restraint, to embrace the fury that lay dormant in his blood. But he pushed it down. He could not afford to become what he feared. "Begin preparations," he ordered. "Every man, every ship, every blade must be ready. The end will come faster than we think." Askelon hesitated, then asked softly, "And you, my lord, what of you?" Sanguinius' eyes met his. "I will face what must be faced." That was all he said. In the days that followed, he felt the warp growing louder. Even within the sanctity of the palace, whispers reached him, snarling, laughing voices that spoke in tones of mockery and temptation. They offered him visions of escape, of impossible futures where he lived, where Horus repented, where the Emperor rose and spoke his name again. But each illusion collapsed when he looked too closely. And each time it did, the laughter returned. He found himself standing often upon the walls of the palace at night, staring into the lightning storms that raged eternally over Terra. He would imagine the fleets descending through those clouds, the sky burning, the streets below running red. He could feel the pull of fate tightening around him. Sometimes he wondered if even the emperor saw what he saw. If his father, immortal, radiant, and silent, knew that one of his most beloved sons was walking willingly toward his own end. And yet deep within that despair, a strange peace took root. Because for all the horror of the vision, Sanguinius began to see what it meant. His death was not meaningless. It was a fulcrum. A sacrifice that would turn the tide. If his blood could buy even a single moment of victory, one heartbeat for the emperor to strike, then it would be enough. He smiled faintly then, wings stirring in the wind. "So be it," he whispered to the storm. "Let prophecy come." And somewhere far across the void, upon the bridge of the vengeful spirit, Horus stirred in his sleep, his corrupted heart beating faster as if in answer to the same rhythm. Two brothers, bound by blood and destiny, dreaming of the same moment, yet standing on opposite sides of eternity. The storm was coming, and soon the angel would stand before it. The storm that had once loomed at the edges of the Sol system was no longer distant. It pressed now against the void itself, a living wall of madness. The warp screamed in colors unseen by mortal eyes, and every astropath who dared open their mind to it either perished or was driven mad. And within the marble heart of the imperial palace, Sanguinius stood at the window of his war chamber and watched the heavens darken. He had not slept in 7 nights. His eyes burned from endless visions, his mind frayed by whispers that clawed at the edge of his consciousness. Yet he remained steady, his back straight, his hands clasped behind him as though holding the galaxy together through sheer will. Behind him, the doors opened. Ascalon entered quietly, his crimson armor dim under the glow of hololithic light. "My lord," he said, kneeling, "reports have come from the phalanx. Dorn confirms that Horus' fleet moves through the warp. The final approach has begun." Sanguinius nodded. He had known it long before the message arrived. He had felt it in the way the air itself seemed to hum, in the way the shadows lengthened across the halls. Fate was moving closer now. "Begin the evacuation protocols for the lower hives," Sanguinius said. "Move every civilian that can be moved. Those who cannot will have to trust the Emperor's mercy." Ascalon hesitated. "And the Legion, my lord, the blood angels await your command." The angel turned, his wings unfurling behind him with the sound of thunder rolling over mountains. "We will not hide behind walls. The IX Legion will stand at the Eternity Gate. If the enemy reaches the palace, we will be the bulwark." He walked past Ascalon, the faint scent of incense following him. "Summon the sanguinary guard, every man of pure blood, everyone who still remembers Baal's skies. They will fight beside me when the time comes." Ascalon rose, his expression firm but his voice heavy. "It shall be done. But my lord, do you still believe the vision is unchangeable, that you must die?" Sanguinius paused at the doorway. For a moment the light caught his features just so, the lines of his face, once serene, now etched with quiet sorrow. "I have seen my death too many times to doubt it, my son, but I will not die in vain." He stepped through the doors and was gone. The blood angels were preparing for war. The great assembly chambers of the IX Legion echoed with the rhythm of armor being sealed, weapons blessed, and oaths spoken. Rows upon rows of crimson warriors stood at attention, their eyes bright with faith and fury. Chaplains walked among them, their croziuses gleaming as they intoned hymns to the emperor and the angel. And above them all, Sanguinius descended the staircase like a vision of divine wrath. His wings stretched wide, his armor polished gold and white, the red teardrop of his legion glinting at his throat. When he spoke, his voice filled the hall like the sound of war drums. "My sons, you were born beneath a dying sun, you were raised among ashes and sorrow, and yet you became the Emperor's wrath made flesh. The galaxy remembers your name in terror and awe. You are the blood angels." The roar that followed shook the hall. "But hear me now," he continued, for the storm we face is not like any other. It is not a war of worlds, it is a war of souls. The enemy is not flesh and bone alone, but corruption itself. Horus comes not merely to destroy, but to unmake, to drag mankind into the abyss from which we were lifted. His gaze swept across his warriors, each one holding his breath. You have heard that I have seen the future, that I have seen my death. It is true, but death does not frighten me, because death is not the end, not for us. So long as a single drop of our blood remains pure, so long as one of you stands in defiance, the Emperor's light will not fade. The chamber erupted. The cry of "For Baal, for the Emperor, for the Angel," thundered through the vaults, and for a fleeting instant Sanguinius felt the crushing weight of his visions lift. Their faith, their fire, it was his strength. And yet, as the echoes faded, the faintest chill brushed against him. A whisper, "He will make them watch you fall." It came not from the hall, but from within his mind. The same mocking presence that had haunted his dreams since the fall of Istvan. It spoke in Horus' voice now, soft, almost tender. "You think your death will inspire them, brother. It will break them." Sanguinius closed his eyes briefly. "Be silent," he murmured. But the whisper did not stop. "They will see their God bleed. They will see the angel torn apart. And when they do, they will know that hope is a lie." He forced the thought away, focusing instead on the sight before him, the faces of his sons, ready to die without hesitation. They were his reason, his proof that hope was not a lie. He raised his sword in salute, the edge catching the light like a flame. "Go forth, my brothers. Stand firm and know this. Whatever comes, I am with you until the end." That night he walked alone through the echoing halls of the palace. He passed the great statues of his brothers, now symbols of both pride and betrayal. Ferrus Manus stood headless, his image marred. Lorgar's visage had been struck from the marble entirely. Horus' statue still stood, though cracks ran through its base as if the stone itself rejected him. Sanguinius stopped before it. He studied the familiar features, the confident smile that once symbolized unity. "How did it come to this, brother?" he whispered. "Was your fall written before you were born, or did we fail you?" The air trembled, and from the depths of the hall came an echo, a shadowed form, faint and flickering, walking toward him. It was Horus, or rather a vision of him. His armor gleamed black, his eyes glowing faintly, but his expression was not cruel, it was mournful. "You could never understand," the apparition said. Sanguinius' hand went to his sword. "I understand enough. You let pride turn you into a weapon against the very Father who made you." "Father," Horus' voice twisted on the word. "He made us to die, Sanguinius, every one of us. You just haven't admitted it yet." "I was not made to die," Sanguinius said. "I was made to stand." The vision smiled faintly. "Then stand, little brother, stand until you fall." The figure vanished like smoke. Sanguinius stood there for a long while after, his heart pounding, the words cutting deeper than any blade. He wanted to dismiss them as the warp's deceit, but deep down, part of him wondered if Horus was right. Was his death merely part of a design, a sacrifice chosen before he ever drew breath? He shook his head, pushing the thought aside. It did not matter. If destiny demanded his death, then he would make it mean something beyond destiny's reach. He turned and walked on, unaware that his reflection lingered a moment longer in the broken marble, eyes faintly glowing gold before fading into darkness. Days later, the alarms began. The outer defenses of the Sol system lit up as the first tendrils of the traitor fleet broke through the warp. Sensors screamed. Vox networks burst with overlapping distress signals. And from orbit, the vengeful spirit emerged like a shadow consuming the stars. The siege of Terra had begun. Within hours, the palace became a fortress alive with purpose. Legions of soldiers filled the walls, the skies swarming with thunderhawks and dropships. Titans moved into position like living mountains. And at the center of it all, Sanguinius stood beside Dorn and Malkador, overlooking the tactical map of Terra. The surface was alive with enemy landings, their trajectories burning paths of red light across the hololithic display. "They come from every direction," Dorn said, his tone grim but controlled. "The outer bastions will not hold." "They were never meant to," Sanguinius replied. "They are the first offering in a war that will not end until one of us lies dead." Malkador, his eyes weary yet sharp, regarded the angel carefully. "You have seen this before, haven't you?" Sanguinius nodded slowly. "Every moment, every cry, every stone that will fall." "Then tell me," the regent said, "does your vision end in victory?" Sanguinius met his gaze. "It ends in sacrifice." Malkador did not ask more. He simply bowed his head, as though in acknowledgement of something beyond understanding. The hololith flared suddenly, one of the outer bastions collapsing. The war had reached the walls. Dorn turned sharply to his brother. "Go, Sanguinius, take your sons, hold the Eternity Gate, no one else can." Sanguinius nodded. "And you?" "I will hold the walls until the last stone breaks," Dorn said. "You will hold the soul of the palace." Their hands met briefly, a warrior's clasp, but more than that, a farewell. Sanguinius, wings unfurled once more, their light filling the chamber. "Then may the Emperor watch over us both." He turned, leaving the chamber, his footsteps echoing through the hall like the tolling of a bell. The time for visions was over. Now came the time for reality. Outside, the sky burned red. The ground quaked beneath the bombardments. The air reeked of ozone and blood. And amidst the chaos, the angel of Baal led his sons into battle. The walls shook with the cries of war, the clash of steel, and the thunder of bolters. Blood angels charged in disciplined ranks, their crimson armor gleaming even under fire. They were beautiful and terrible, the embodiment of divine wrath. Sanguinius was among them, his blade a blur of light, his wings cutting through the smoke like fire through darkness. Each strike felled 10 men. Each motion was a symphony of war. He was more than a warrior, he was hope incarnate. And as he fought, as he carved through the endless tide, he felt the vision return, not as a dream this time, but as a whisper at the edge of his senses. "This is the path, angel. This is how it begins." He saw flashes, the inner halls burning, Horus standing before him, the Emperor's light dimming. The moment he had feared was no longer a prophecy. It was a countdown. He fought harder, faster, but no matter how many foes fell before him, the whisper never ceased. It was not death that terrified him anymore. It was the knowing that everything he saw was already written. And yet, even knowing that, he refused to yield. For hope was not denial, hope was defiance. They told him the vision was a blessing, that to see one's fate was to be marked by destiny itself. But Sanguinius knew better. He knew that what he saw in his dreams was not fate, it was a countdown. Every night it grew clearer. The golden hall drenched in ruin, the throne cracked, the scent of blood heavy in the air, metallic and sharp. His wings broken, feathers blackened with soot and ichor. The archangel of Baal, once radiant, now a creature of prophecy and doom. He had seen his death so many times that it had become familiar, almost intimate. The figure in front of him, tall, armored in obsidian plate carved with screaming faces, his blade a wound in reality itself. Horus, his brother. And yet, what haunted Sanguinius was not the death that awaited him, but the silence of the Emperor. The Great Crusade had once filled his heart with fire. He remembered standing beside the Emperor when worlds bowed and banners of gold stretched across the void. Back then, he had believed. He had believed in unity, in light, in destiny. Now in the long shadow of betrayal, that light flickered. The walls of the red tier thrummed with warp turbulence as the fleet crossed into the shadow of Terra. Outside, the void burned with the madness of the warp storms of shrieking faces, demonic lightning coiling across hulls. Yet Sanguinius stood still, unmoving, his gaze locked on the hololithic image of the Sol system. "Lord Sanguinius," said Ascalon, his captain of the guard, stepping forward with his helmet tucked under his arm. His face was pale beneath the gold of his armor. "The VII Legion signals readiness. Rogel Dorn awaits our arrival." Sanguinius turned, and the War Master. Ascalon hesitated. No word, no sign, but the transmissions from the outer worlds are grim. Horus's vanguard advances faster than expected. It is said Mars burns. The angel closed his eyes. He could feel it, the pull of the warp, the scent of betrayal, the echo of 1,000 screams. The Emperor's light was dimming, and somewhere beyond that darkness, his brother's laughter rolled through the void like thunder. "Prepare the fleet," Sanguinius said quietly. "We will not wait for doom to find us. We will meet it head-on." The descent onto Terra was not a triumph. It was a funeral procession. The skies over the Imperial Palace were a canvas of black smoke and ash. Great void shields shimmered overhead, bending light as orbital bombardment struck again and again. The palace walls, monuments of gold and marble, now bore the scars of war. Sanguinius stepped onto the marble causeway as the wind tore through his white hair. The custodians bowed low as he passed, their golden armor dulled by soot. And at the heart of it all stood Rogel Dorn, the Praetorian of Terra. His face was a granite mask, unbroken by emotion. "You came," Dorn said simply. "I had to," Sanguinius replied. "I saw this. I saw all of this." Dorn's jaw tightened. "Then you know how it ends." Sanguinius looked toward the sky. Thunderhawks streaked above like dying embers. "I saw my death, yes, but not the Emperor's, not Terra's. That means there's still hope." Dorn's eyes narrowed. "Or it means your vision is incomplete." "Perhaps," Sanguinius said softly. "But if I am to fall, I will fall where my father stands." The days that followed were a blur of war and desperation. The angel moved from battlement to battlement, his sword flame of Baal, a streak of fire cutting through the heretic hordes. His sons, the blood angels, fought with unmatched fury, their crimson armor drenched in the blood of traitors and brothers alike. The siege of Terra had begun. And amidst the screams and gunfire, Sanguinius's visions grew stronger. Each night he would dream of the final battle, the golden throne, the broken wings, the traitor's blade. And each time he awoke, he felt more certain that every step brought him closer to it. He tried to hide it from his sons. He smiled when he could. He spoke of valor, of sacrifice, of love for the Emperor. But when he looked into their eyes, Raldoran, Ascalon, Nasir Amit, he saw reflections of his own fear. He remembered the first time he had seen Horus after the War Master's fall. That hollow look, the false smile, the voice that trembled with venom disguised as brotherhood. He remembered the warmth in Horus's eyes when they had sworn loyalty to the Emperor together, and the coldness that had replaced it. Now, as shells rained upon the palace and traitor titans roared across the plains, Sanguinius wondered if any of them could have stopped this. If perhaps the seeds of rebellion were sown not by Horus alone, but by the silence that lingered from the top, the divine distance of the Emperor. He pushed the thought away. Doubt was a luxury. In the 9th day of siege, the outer walls fell. The Iron Warriors breached the Saturnine Gate with their infernal siege engines, and for every heretic that died, 10 more surged forward. The palace was a storm of blood and steel. Sanguinius fought until his armor was split and scorched. His wings hung heavy with dust and ash, yet he did not falter. He could not. At dusk, he stood atop the Eternity Wall and looked out over the burning plains. The horizon was fire. The skies were filled with dropships, demonic silhouettes flickering behind them, and beneath that hellish canopy, the blood of billions stained the soil of mankind's last bastion. Ascalon joined him in silence. "Do you still see it?" he asked quietly. Sanguinius nodded. Every time I close my eyes, I see the end, I see him. Ascalon's hand tightened around his halberd. Then let us change it, my lord. Visions are not chains. Sanguinius looked at him and smiled faintly. If I could, my son, I would, but prophecy is not a thing of man. It is the whisper of the warp itself. Then let us silence the warp, Ascalon said fiercely. The angel turned his gaze to the stars, where Horus's fleet waited like vultures over the corpse of hope. Soon, he murmured, soon he will come for me, and I will go to him. That night sleep would not come. Sanguinius knelt in the sanctum of the imperial palace, a chamber lit by the dim light of candles and the distant roar of bombardments. Before him stood the great doors of the throne room, sealed by the custodians. Beyond them, the emperor sat upon his throne, unmoving, unseen. Sanguinius bowed his head. "Father," he whispered, "I have done all you asked. I have bled for mankind. I have led your sons to glory, to ruin, to this." He hesitated. The silence that followed was deafening. No voice, no warmth, no divine presence. He felt the ache in his chest deepen. He wanted to hear the emperor's voice one last time, to know that his sacrifice had meaning, that all this death, all this horror was not in vain. But only the wind answered. He rose, feathers trembling in the still air. "Then I will go to my death as I was made, with wings unbroken and faith intact." He turned, and for a moment he thought he saw something, a glimmer of gold, faint as the last light before nightfall. A silent acknowledgment, perhaps, or simply his imagination. He didn't know which comforted him more. When dawn came, the void darkened. Horus's fleet broke orbit. The sky turned to fire. The final act was approaching, and Sanguinius felt it in his bones, that strange calm before the storm that ends all storms. His death was coming, yes, but it would not be meaningless. He summoned his captains, gave his final orders, and as the thunder of war consumed the horizon, he lifted his blade to the heavens and whispered, "So be it." The prophecy was in motion. The angel's path could not be changed now. But in the depth of his heart, as the last defenses of Terra burned, and the War Master's flagship cast its shadow across the palace, Sanguinius swore that if he was to die, then he would make Horus remember what it meant to face an angel. The end began not with fire, but with silence. The bombardment ceased. The traitor guns that had torn the heavens apart grew still. The air itself trembled, heavy with expectation. Across the ruined battlements of Terra, soldiers paused, loyalist and traitor alike, as if the universe itself was holding its breath. And in that quiet the shadow fell. The vengeful spirit, Horus's flagship, emerged from the clouds above Terra like a mountain of iron and hate. It blotted out the sun. Its void shields shimmered like a malignant halo. Beneath its hull, the mark of the eye of Horus burned like a wound in the sky. Sanguinius knew. The prophecy was unfolding exactly as it had in his dreams. He stood upon the highest spire of the imperial palace, his wings spread wide, his armor cracked and bloodstained from weeks of war. Every breath was pain. Every heartbeat was a drumbeat counting down the seconds to destiny. Below him the last loyal legions fought and died. The walls of the palace were drowned in fire. Titans clashed, engines screamed, and the air was thick with ash. The sky itself bled. He felt every death, every scream, every prayer whispered to the emperor. It was time. Ascalon found him there, kneeling before the broken statue of the emperor that once adorned the palace peak. "My lord," he said, his voice raw, "the void assault has stopped. Dorn believes Horus is inviting a confrontation." Sanguinius rose slowly. "He invites his doom or mine." Ascalon's expression hardened. "Then let us go together." Sanguinius turned, his gaze sharp as a blade. "No, you must stay. Guard the palace, guard him." Ascalon stepped forward, trembling. "You know what awaits you. You've seen it. Why walk into it willingly?" The angel's eyes softened. Because it must be me. The emperor cannot face Horus while the eye remains closed. I can draw his wrath, weaken him, perhaps even. He stopped himself. Hope was a fragile thing, and he would not shatter it on his captain's heart. Ascalon dropped to one knee, his fist against his chest. Then I will not stop you, my lord, but I will not forgive the emperor if he lets you fall alone. Sanguinius placed a hand on his shoulder. Do not mourn me, my son. My death is not the end. It is the key that unlocks his victory. And with that the angel leapt. Wings spread, he soared through the burning skies of Terra one last time. He pierced the storm of ash and warplight, ascending toward the black silhouette of the vengeful spirit. The winds tore at his armor, his blood streamed behind him like a crimson banner. Lightning forked across the void, unnatural lightning, screaming faces woven into the clouds. Demons clawed at the air around him, birthed from the corrupt will of the War Master's ship. They howled his name in mockery, but Sanguinius burned brighter than any warp phantom. His sword, the flame of Baal, blazed with holy fire, cutting through the specters like a dawn through nightmare. He landed upon the obsidian hull of the War Master's flagship with a sound like thunder. The surface trembled beneath his feet. The armor of the ship seemed alive, veins of molten corruption pulsing across the metal. He could feel Horus inside, waiting. Sanguinius drove his sword into the ship's hull and whispered, "Open." And the vengeful spirit obeyed. The deck split apart like the maw of a beast, revealing a corridor of blackened steel that seemed to breathe. The air within was heavy, not just with heat, but with the scent of despair, of betrayal made manifest. He stepped inside. The halls of the vengeful spirit were no longer human. They pulsed with demonic life, walls that shifted like flesh, corridors that whispered, faces that formed and dissolved in the metal. Every step he took echoed with the screams of the damned. He passed murals painted in blood, images of Horus triumphant over the emperor, of mankind in chains, of angels broken and burning. Sanguinius ignored them. He had one purpose. He walked for what felt like hours, though time had lost meaning aboard the War Master's vessel. The deeper he went, the more the ship seemed to feed upon his memories. He heard the laughter of his sons, the hymns of Baal, the voices of those he had lost, and beneath it all Horus's voice. "Brother." It came like a whisper from the walls themselves, smooth, familiar. "You've come far, all to see me again." Sanguinius stopped. "I did not come for you, I came for what you became." "Then look upon it," Horus said. "Look upon the truth of mankind." The corridor ahead rippled, and in an instant it opened into the grand audience chamber. It was vast, a cathedral of ruin. Pillars of bone rose toward a ceiling lost in shadow. Rivers of molten gold flowed across the floor, carrying with them fragments of armor, weapons, and skulls. At the center, upon a dais of twisted metal, sat Horus Lupercal, the War Master. He was no longer the brother Sanguinius had once loved. His armor was a monument to sin, black and crimson, edged in gold that burned with warp fire. His skin glowed faintly, as though lit from within by something that should never exist. His eyes were pits of lightless flame. And yet, beneath all that corruption, Sanguinius still saw the man he had once followed into 1,000 battles. The brother who had laughed beside him, who had sworn oaths of loyalty under the stars. Horus smiled. "Ah, the angel comes, so noble, so doomed." Sanguinius descended the stairs slowly, sword in hand. "End this madness, Horus. You were the War Master, the Emperor's chosen. You could still." Horus's laughter cut him off, booming and cruel. "Chosen? He made me less than him. We were never sons. We were tools, weapons to wage his war. Look at you, still groveling for his favor, even as he hides behind his golden throne." "He hides to protect humanity," Sanguinius retorted, "to shield it from this, from what you have become." Horus's grin widened. Protect? No, he hoards power, he fears what we could be, he fears freedom. Sanguinius shook his head. No, brother, you fear meaning, you traded purpose for pride. The room darkened as the warp shivered around them. Horus rose from his throne, his mace in hand, the world-breaker, black as a starless void. So Horus said softly, it ends here. Sanguinius tightened his grip on the flame of Baal. It began long before this moment, Horus. I will not let you have our father. They collided. The impact shattered the air, sent shockwaves tearing through the chamber. Fire and lightning erupted as the two Primarchs clashed, angelic radiance against abyssal might. Sanguinius struck first, his blade a beam of burning light that seared the shadows from the air. Horus countered, his mace crashing against the sword with a sound like the cracking of worlds. Every strike shook the walls, every movement was a blur. Sanguinius was faster, his wings weaving patterns of gold through the darkness. But Horus was relentless, every blow backed by the will of the dark gods. Each clash left fissures in the floor, where demons clawed their way into reality, screaming in worship of the battle. Still you fight for a throne that will never love you, Horus roared, striking again and again. I fight for those who cannot, Sanguinius shouted back, driving his blade deep into Horus's armor. Black ichor spilled. Horus staggered for an instant, the old brother flickered behind his eyes. Sanguinius, Horus whispered, voice trembling, it doesn't have to be this way. Sanguinius hesitated just long enough to see the lie, the trap. Horus's hand shot forward, a surge of warp energy struck the angel like a hammer. His armor cracked, his wings torn as he was hurled across the chamber. He hit the dais hard, blood spilling from his mouth. Brother, Horus said, striding toward him, you cannot fight fate. Sanguinius looked up, smiling through the blood. I already have. He rose again, broken but unyielding. His wings dragged against the ground, his blade trembling in his hand, but the light had not left his eyes. He charged one final time. Their weapons met, in a blinding explosion of light and darkness. The floor split, the warp screamed. And then silence. When it cleared, Sanguinius stood impaled upon the Worldbreaker's haft. His blood glowed like molten gold, spilling across the floor. Horus looked down at him, victorious, yet hollow. Why, brother, Horus asked, why die for him? Sanguinius's lips curled into a faint smile. Because I saw this moment long ago, and I saw what comes after. Horus frowned. What do you mean? Sanguinius met his gaze. Your victory ends here. And as his final breath escaped, the angel's body blazed with a light so pure, so radiant, that even the warp recoiled. For a heartbeat, Horus felt fear, true fear, for the first time since his fall. The angel of Baal was dead. But his light had burned into the War Master's soul, leaving a wound that no god could heal. The prophecy was fulfilled, but its echo had only begun. There was no sound at first, only light. The light that poured from Sanguinius's broken form was not of this world. It wasn't the brilliance of plasma or the flicker of fire. It was something purer, older. It cut through the madness of the warp like a blade through smoke. Every demon that lingered in the shadow of the vengeful spirit screamed and recoiled. And Horus, once the War Master, now a god's puppet, staggered backward, his breath caught. His armor hissed, burning at the edges where the light touched him. He looked down at the angel's body lying at his feet. The once white wings were now crimson with blood. The face, serene even in death, seemed to glow faintly, as though peace had come at last. For a heartbeat, the memory of brotherhood returned. Horus saw himself and Sanguinius standing side by side on the battlefields of Ullanor, laughing amidst victory. He remembered the promises they made to build a future where humanity would no longer live in fear. He almost dropped his weapon. Then the dark gods whispered again. He was weak, you are not. The moment of hesitation shattered. Horus turned away. "Let the dead be forgotten," he said, but his voice trembled. The blood of Sanguinius seeped into the ship's deck, and the vengeful spirit groaned, the vessel itself recoiling at the purity it could not consume. And far below, on Terra, the Emperor felt it. The golden throne shook. Tech priests screamed as power conduits overloaded. The light of the astronomicon flickered, dimmed, and then burned brighter than ever before. The Emperor opened his eyes. For weeks he had remained seated, locked in psychic battle with the demonic forces threatening to tear Terra apart. His mind was everywhere, guiding, shielding, enduring. But now something broke through the noise. A voice. A silence filled with meaning. Sanguinius. He had seen it, the angel's final breath, the light that defied the abyss. The Emperor rose, his golden armor cracking as divine fury surged through him. For the first time since the siege began, he moved. Custodians fell to their knees as he strode past, unable to bear his radiance. The air shimmered where he walked. Rogel Dorn appeared before him, battered, bloodied, yet unbroken. "My lord," Dorn said, his voice shaking. "He's gone. Sanguinius is gone." "I know," the Emperor said quietly, "and Horus will pay the price." The teleport flare shattered the air. In a single moment, the Emperor vanished from Terra's throne room and appeared within the vengeful spirit. The ship's corridors, once defiled by chaos, fell silent in his presence. The walls ceased their writhing. Demonic faces melted away like wax before fire. The air grew still, heavy with awe and terror. He walked forward, each step echoing with power that the warp itself dared not oppose. And then he saw it, the Hall of Bone, the rivers of gold, and at its center, the broken body of his son. Sanguinius lay still, his wings folded around him like a shroud. His sword lay beside him, its blade dimmed. The Emperor knelt. He did not weep. He did not rage. He simply placed his hand upon his son's brow, and for an instant the light within Sanguinius's form flickered once more, a silent farewell between father and son. "Rest now, my child," the Emperor whispered. "You have done all I could ask." Then he rose, and his wrath followed. Horus waited upon his throne, his eyes gleaming with mockery. "So," the War Master said, voice heavy with pride and venom, "the god comes at last. Did you come to see your precious angel die?" The Emperor said nothing. Horus spread his arms wide. "Look at him, your most beloved son, dead by my hand. You made me what I am, and now I end you as you ended us." The Emperor advanced slowly. The air rippled around him. His aura burned brighter with every step, golden fire bleeding into the corrupted chamber. "Once," the Emperor said, "you were my finest creation. You were the hope of mankind. Now you are its enemy." Horus's smile faltered. "And what are you then? A god who hides behind silence, a tyrant who cannot bear his children's freedom." "I am," the Emperor said, "what I must be." And with that the last battle began. No mortal eyes could have witnessed it. No words could capture it. When gods fight, reality breaks. The first clash of their power tore the floor apart, hurling molten gold and shards of bone into the air. Warp storms bled into the material realm, time folding and fracturing as light and darkness collided. Horus struck first, his mace trailing black lightning. The Emperor raised his hand, and the blow shattered against an invisible barrier of will alone. The counterstrike sent Horus reeling, armor splitting, ichor boiling from within. The War Master roared, summoning the full might of the chaos gods that dwelled within him. Demonic forms spilled from his armor, shrieking. Faces of the damned cried for blood. The Emperor's expression did not change. He unleashed his power, not a weapon, not a blast, but truth, a wave of golden light that burned through illusion and lie alike. The demons screamed as they disintegrated, their masters recoiling. But Horus endured. He met the Emperor's gaze and swung again, faster than any mortal eye could see. The strike connected, the Emperor staggered, his armor fracturing, his blood, pure light, scattering across the floor. Horus laughed triumphant. Even gods can bleed. Then you are no god, the Emperor said, his voice echoing across the warp itself. He thrust out his hand. The psychic storm that followed devoured everything. Outside, the fleets in orbit felt it, a pulse that shattered communications, that silenced both loyalist and traitor alike. Every soul in the system turned their gaze to the heavens and felt something ancient stir. On Terra, Ascalon fell to his knees. He knew. He felt his father's light fading. "Forgive me, Lord," he whispered. Within the vengeful spirit, the duel reached its crescendo. Horus poured everything into one final strike. The warp itself screamed through him. Every chaos god lent him their strength. The air burned with hatred, despair, and ruin. The Emperor caught the blow with both hands. For a moment they were still locked, unyielding. Then the Emperor saw it. For just an instant in the depths of Horus's corrupted soul, he saw what had been. The proud son, the loyal war master, the laughter, the trust. And for that brief flash he hesitated. He lowered his power. And Horus struck. The blow tore through divine armor, through flesh and light. The Emperor fell to one knee, his body burning with agony beyond comprehension. Horus laughed again. "You see, Father, you are no god, you can die." And then he looked down. The Emperor's hand was upon his chest. "I will not die today," the Emperor said softly, "but you will be undone." Golden light erupted. It consumed everything, the room, the ship, the warp itself. It was not fury or vengeance. It was love, fierce, terrible, absolute. The love of a father who must destroy his child to save the rest. Horus screamed. His armor split apart, his flesh disintegrating into ash and light. The chaos gods shrieked as their champion was unmade. When it was over, nothing of Horus remained. The vengeful spirit fell silent once more. The warp retreated, ashamed. The Emperor lay broken beside the body of his fallen son. His armor cracked, his life force fading. He turned his gaze to Sanguinius, to the angel who had seen all of this coming, who had walked knowingly into death to make this moment possible. "You saw what must be done," the Emperor whispered. "You saw and you did not turn away. You were the brightest of them all." He reached out a trembling hand, resting it upon the angel's shoulder. "Your death will not be in vain." Then he spoke the words that reshaped eternity. "Let mankind endure." Moments later, the teleportation beacon activated. Rogel Dorn and the custodians arrived in a blaze of light, finding the Emperor slumped beside the corpses of Horus and Sanguinius. "Father," Dorn shouted, rushing forward. The Emperor looked up, his eyes now dim. "It is done. The war is over." "Not like this," Dorn whispered, kneeling. "We can save you." "Place me upon the throne," the Emperor said. "There I can still guard humanity." And so they did. Sanguinius's body was returned to Baal with honor beyond measure. The blood angels wept, their fury and grief forging them into something new, something cursed and eternal. The red thirst, the black rage, born from their father's final stand. But to them he was never truly gone. His vision had saved the Imperium. His death had bought its future. And somewhere, in the silent halls of the warp where no god dared tread, the light of the angel still burned, eternal, unyielding. Because Sanguinius had seen his death coming. And he had embraced it. Not as defeat, but as destiny.